Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of King Arthur and the Lady of the Lake. I'm Michael Laurie, and this is my co-host over here, Helen Glover. And welcome again to Helen's earrings. Look at those earrings. Magnificent. I love them. Hi, Helen.
Hi, how you going, Michael?
Awesome as always. Awesome as always. So today we're going to be talking about, do we have the same discussions with our girls as we do with our boys around how to treat members of the opposite sex? And this was motivated by the fact that on social media yesterday, I saw a video of a woman having a discussion with her son, and her son and her son's, well, her children, son and daughter, were twins, so exactly the same age. But she recorded a discussion that she was having with her son around how to treat his sister and how to treat girls in general. But it wasn't entirely obvious that she had had the same discussion or was planning on having the same discussion with her daughter and about how to treat boys. And so it brought up a lot for me around, are we having the same discussions with both sexes, girls and boys, around how to treat members of the opposite sex? Because I wonder if girls are growing up with this sense of entitlement about how they should be treated, but no sense of responsibility about how they are meant to be treating um, boys, and as they get older, men, with the same positive regard, the same respect, and the same consideration. And I'll speak very quickly into my experience of, because I have two daughters and a son. My son's the oldest, and then I have a daughter who's, so my son's 23, my daughter's 19, and we have another little daughter who's almost 4. And so when my oldest two, when they were growing up together in the household, I remember as a young man in my early 20s having very good quality discussions with my son about how he should treat his sister and how he should treat girls. And you are respectful towards girls, and you don't hit girls, and you don't get aggressive with girls, right? And you don't do all this stuff. But I don't recall back then ever having a discussion with Isabella, my oldest daughter, about how she should also treat Matthew with respect and consideration. And I don't see this as a thing in society. We're very focused on telling boys how to treat girls and teaching them good quality behavior around girls and women, but we don't do the same with girls as far as I can see.
Mm.
What do you think, Helen?
Yeah, how old were the twins that the lady was talking to, the boy?
Oh, they look to be around somewhere between sort of 8 and 10.
Mm,
So
mm,
they got it, they're old enough to understand this stuff and how we
yeah.
treat other people. Yeah.
Yeah, because I'm just asking because my twins are 8 and they're boy-girl twins. And
Yep.
I have 2 older children, as well, boy-girl. So
Mm.
2 sons and 2 daughters. And I think this is a really, really valid conversation, and I really love that we're doing this here because I often, when I'm speaking up for men during my work, I instantly have feedback that that must mean I'm against women,
Yep.
and and I've had that comment, when I've said, when I speak to my daughter, my son, blah blah blah, and then I'll get something like, "Yeah, well, we have daughters, and this is what men do to our daughters." And I said, "Actually, I have 2 daughters as well."
Yep.
And so I'm actually doing these conversations for all of my children.
Yep.
It's not one, we can't get along with just supporting one gender. We can't get along with that, so it's interesting. I have this, um I've brought this up before and I got a lot of feedback around this. What I find is that my daughter is able to express herself however she likes, but my son is asked not to touch anything or anybody, to be really aware of hugs, and that to be, and it's like pushed into him when no means no. Whereas I don't see somebody saying to my daughter, if she pushes her boundaries, no means no.
Yep.
It's like she's not a threat, but a man is. And my youngest son, he's so soft and lovely, and he's just a walking heart on legs. You could see as he was growing up, and people would be like, really kind of pushing the adult boy thought process on this little boy,
Mm.
that they already had decided that men were and have the capacity to be this, so we're going to knock it out of you right now.
Yeah.
And I just really have a massive problem with that.
As do I. As
He
do I.
as And I'm talking about, my particular boy, at this, kind of looking at him and going, he is this person. He's not just a man. He's
Yeah.
all round person,
Mm.
and he has all the characteristics of a person. There are men who offend, and there are women who offend. There are violent men, there are violent women. And I remember my older son, when he was growing, saying to him, darling, this is really how to do that, because these are the reasons. And also saying to my daughter, this is what it looks like to be treated really well, and this is what it looks like to respect that. So it's almost that balance of, um, I get that you could have the capacity to behave like that, but I trust that you won't. So I'm going
Mm.
to foster that. And I'm not going to tell you what not to do, because I believe you're eventually going to do it. Do you know what I mean? Talking into
Yeah,
the
I know what you mean. Yeah.
person, rather than actually encouraging their beautiful behaviors, to say, oh, I know that you really love to cuddle, and you just have to be aware when somebody's uncomfortable with that. So, but I really don't like this hands off policy where they're shamed for touching each other. And then all I know that when they get to be in their 20s, the boys, their girlfriends or whatever, go, you're so unaffectionate, or, why don't you cuddle me? Or why don't you want to hold hands in public? It's like, because I've been told my entire life that I'm not allowed to touch women because it's inappropriate.
Yeah.
And so, where's the balance of saying, it's nice to hug, and you're allowed to be affectionate, and you're allowed to show that level of beauty. And as they get older, then we touch on for them the appropriateness of it, rather
Yeah,
than, I suppose what I'm getting at is, I think we educate young children with adult concepts.
we do. And some people might, I agree with that. I'm just hearing the unconscious bias already. And the unconscious bias says, well, teenage boys can't control their hormones. And so if we don't teach them what's appropriate and what isn't,
Mm,
and how far is far enough,
yeah.
right? Then who knows what they will do unconsciously, because they're being ruled by their hormones, and girls will end up being sexual abuse victims.
And this is where I just think I can't have that, like, I actually want my boys to be encouraged to be affectionate, I suppose, is
Yep.
what I'm getting at. And I find it really hard to walk that line, because I see that people don't agree with what I'm saying. And they
Yep.
look at my daughter, and my daughter is having um kind of classes at school around how to express her emotions and all that kind of thing. And I've kind of said, well, what are we going to do about the boys? Because they need to be able to express their feelings as well. And so,
Oh,
um,
so hang on. There's classes for girls around how do you express your feelings, but not for boys? Is that
in
what you're
this
saying?
one particular instance, and what it was for, it was geared around girls not being the mean girl to each other. It was about the kind of
Got
bitchy
it.
scenario. And so I totally agree with that. And I could see
Yep.
where it was of complete use. So I'm not dissing that at all. But I also thought it would be really lovely to offer a very similar thing to the boys. And that wasn't seen. And it was kind of like, oh, well, boys aren't like that to each other. But yeah, but boys struggle in a different way. So for me, um, I laugh at my twins. I'll say to them, like, they were born married, right? They were born in a married relationship. They
Right.
came into the world as a man and as a girl and a boy, handling a dual relationship. So everything that happens, they're looking at what the other person is doing, and that's their yardstick. And so, how are they being treated versus how I'm being treated? So I'm the first person to get the call of, like, you didn't do that to me, and I did that. So I'm really kept on my toes. But
Yeah.
I really, I make sure that um, it isn't just Pepper who ends up taking the dishes into the kitchen because she's a girl, for example. It's kind of like we take it in turns to do things like that. But even that, it can slip by you, because her natural instinct is to take them into the kitchen, not because she's a girl, but that's her personality. My older girl doesn't do that. But like it is a personality trait as well. So you're dealing with their personality traits as well as their gender bias, as well as
Mm,
then the education of keeping it neutral. And it's a fine line to walk.
yep.
Um, and I look at how, I've got two older children now and how they've developed and what their kind of personality is, and looking at these two new kids coming through with COVID and not being allowed to, you know, be close to anybody, and that whole messaging is massive.
So I wonder then, how do we, because I agree with you, I think that we shouldn't suppress children's natural expression. I don't think we should we should seek to suppress that. So how would you say then that we could teach them in really, really good quality ways uh, about boundaries? Like within that expression, there has to be boundaries as well, right? Because as you touched on before, some people are more comfortable than others with a hug, with being in close physical proximity with each other. Some people are okay with that. Other people want their space, and their personal space bubble is bigger, and they don't like hugging people that they don't necessarily know. I wonder how we start to create boundaries around that, because this is another one of those discussions where it could go in many different ways and at different depths, rabbit holes, all this sort of stuff, right? So we have to start to really understand, what does it mean to have a good quality discussion with our sons and our daughters about what's appropriate and what isn't, and people's boundaries and all that sort of stuff.
Well, why is the discussion about affection any different to the discussion around conversation? Hey, mommy's talking, I need you to wait. That's a
Yep.
boundary.
Yep, it is.
And so I don't have a problem setting that boundary. So why is it different for me to say, darling, I don't want you to hug me about this right now. I want
Yep.
to talk to you. And then if we want to hug afterwards, that's going to be okay. So I don't understand. It's like the taboo subjects become so much more difficult because of what we put on them. But
Yep.
actually, it's the same discussion as any boundary.
I agree with you.
Yeah. It's
I'm being the devil's advocate here, which is the majority of society who are going to be listening to this discussion saying, yes, but what if
that's
and
right.
how, right? Because I'm totally with you. I'm totally with you on this. I think we place so many adult concepts of limiting our expressions onto our children that they grow up as teenagers and young adults with no idea whatsoever how to express their feelings. And the only way that they can express their feelings is, my video is just turned off. I'll take care of this in just a second. But the only way that they can express their feelings are in ways that they have been conditioned not to,
Yeah.
right?
Mm,
Yep. So you keep on talking while while you're doing that. I can still hear you, and I'm going to fix up my video
sure.
because we're having a good discussion. I don't want to end this just because of my
Yeah,
video.
I think as well, something I really, really must mention in here, which is probably going to be a bit of a trigger for a lot of parents, is that I am so sick of parents trying to prove how great a parent they are by using their children in these videos to say, look at me parenting my children so beautifully. Look at me being an advocate for women with my child. And they're almost using their children to push their own ego of what a great person they are.
Yep.
And and underneath there's a darkness to that. It's the proving that they're this great parent and that they're bringing these great morals into this child, and we are using children like this more and more and more. um, it's an ego based parenting.
Yep.
It's using the child to show the world, um, oh wow, look at what she did and how well she did it, rather than just kind of saying, well, I'm going to have this discussion with you in private so it
Mm,
can go whichever way it needs to go. um, and that I'm actually interested in what you think about that, and I'm going to have a discussion with a 4-year-old that is relevant to a 4-year-old, and I'm going to have a discussion with an 8-year-old. So what that might look like is to say, you know, what do you think the differences are between boys and girls?
mm,
And get their perspective So you're
Yeah.
not giving them your thoughts. You're actually hearing what their thoughts are and guiding them then to maybe think about it in a different way if their views are wrong. Their views might be actually completely beautiful, and they kind of go, and they're listening to you with your kind of soapbox, thinking, I actually don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
You're introducing concepts that they actually don't think. Um, so to
So
say, oh, what do you think? I had this chat with Pepper and Otis, said, oh, what do you think the differences between boys and girls are? And we have it quite often because their views change so much. And they'll sit in the back of the car, and I love listening to them. And one of them said, oh, like girls have long hair. And the other one said, oh, well, boys have long hair as well. So and so's got long hair. And it's like, oh yeah, he's got long hair. Well, there's not that then. And oh, well, I think, and my daughter said, I think girls scream louder than boys. I think they definitely scream. And Otis is like, yeah, they're like louder. And then, my daughter was like, yeah, but you're like rougher. And he's like, yeah, we're rougher. And so that it was really nice that they chatted about what they notice. And it
yeah,
was actually in appreciation of the differences rather
I
than,
think that's a really good quality discussion, isn't it? To,
you
to be
know,
able to have with our children.
yeah, and it wasn't about like, this is not what you do because she's a girl, and this is not what you do because he's a boy, or this is what you do because it's a girl, and this is what you do because it's a boy. It's kind of like, what do you think about that?
Yeah.
Because the world's changed so much since we're still sticking up for what was happening to us 20 years ago. But
Mm.
they're growing up in a world where it doesn't look like that to them, but we keep reintroducing our adult concepts.
Yeah.
And that is ego based on proving ourselves to society as a really, aware parent and conscious parent and all that. And I beg to differ.
Yeah, I totally agree. And just for a little bit of feedback on what's going on with my video, I'll take. I think what happened for everybody out there that's watching this, I think what happened was that last night I did not plug my Sony DSLR camera into charge. And so the battery it keeps on saying battery exhausted. And the only way to do this is to unplug it, plug it into the PowerPoint to charge. But my microphone is still working perfectly, as you can hear. So I think what we might do, if it's okay with you, Helen, is we've been going for longer than our 20 or 25 minutes anyway that we normally say that we'd like to go for.
Mm,
And I think we've had a good discussion around that. And I think what a good segue into the next episode could be is around parenting and how we condition our children and the unconscious biases that we place on them in childhood, which they then bring into their adult lives, and the effect that they can have in relationships, business, work, their own sense of self-belief and what they believe about themselves and the world as well. And
mm,
how we can start, because our children will be conditioned anyway, because that's just how it works, right? We are all conditioned in certain ways. And can we control that conditioning so that they have a better experience of being an adult?
mm.
I
Prepare
think,
to be embarrassed is what I always say to any new parent. Prepare to be embarrassed. Prepare
yeah,
for your child to not behave how you'd like them to behave, and get used to it. Because the second you start looking at your children to impress other people for you, it's a problem.
and I think a lot of people actually seek to, you know, live vicariously through their children in terms of behavior,
Mm,
and and seek approval and validation for who they are as a person based on how their child behaves.
mm.
And so there's a lot of projected identification there, um, from a place of just not feeling worthy, which is another topic we could discuss too.
Yeah.
But Helen, because no one can see me, you can just hear me. Just this disembodied voice. Would you like to take it out for us today?
Sure, sure. Thanks everyone for listening, and we'll continue this conversation in another form next week. Look forward to seeing you every Tuesday. New episodes comes out, and so we'll check you then. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks, everyone, and you'll be able to see me properly next time.
See you.